Al-24 Midnight News, and to the headlines. As Algeria affirmed its unwavering support to the Palestinian cause, more than 90 countries at the United Nations have expressed deep concern at Zionist punitive measures against Palestinian people. Algeria prevents Morocco from using sports forum to further its political objectives, and Moroccan Football Federation brought before the disciplinary committee by the continental body. In Europe, Russia said Tuesday that it would make major changes to armed forces from 2023 to 2026, promising to shake up its military structure after months setback on the battlefield in Ukraine. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos kicked off in Swiss resort amid an energy crisis reduced by the war in Ukraine, soaring inflation and rising interest rates. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host, Abdurrahim Kashura, and those were today's top stories. Another Palestinian was killed on Tuesday by the bullets of the Zionist occupation forces north of Al Khalil, Palestinian news agency reported. According to the same source, the occupation forces fired a burst of bullets in the direction of Hamid Shakir Abu Daya, 40 years old, which led to his death. Meanwhile, more than 20 Palestinians were arrested in the same day in the different regions of the occupied West Bank, according to the Palestinian Prisoners Club. Still with the Palestine, UN member states have called the Zionist entity to lift the sanctions imposed on Palestinian Authority earlier this month, over its push to get an advisory opinion on the International Court of Justice on decades-long Zionist occupation of the Palestinian lands. On December 30, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution requesting an opinion from International Court of Justice on the issue of Zionist occupation of Palestinian territories. Still in the same story, Algeria affirmed its unwavering support for the Palestinian people regarding their right to self-determination and is steadfast in the position in support of Palestinians in order to restore their legitimate rights and establish their sovereign state.
The joint Arab movement is consistent with the magnitude of the challenges imposed in light of the current circumstances and rises to the level of the sacrifices of the brotherly Palestinian people. Algeria remains faithful to its principles regarding the right of peoples to self-determination and is steadfast in its positions in support of the Palestinian people in order to restore their legitimate rights, foremost of which is their right to establish their state, independent state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital.
Secretary General of Algerian Ministry of Defense Major General Mohammed Salih received Monday in the Algerian capital the Senior Advisor for Defense in Middle East and East and North Africa region of the British Ministry of Defense, Air Marshal Martin Elliott Sampson. The Algerian Ministry of Defense stated that the two sides held bilateral talks on the occasion in the presence of Major General Director of Foreign Relations and Cooperation of the Algerian Ministry of Defense and members of the accompanying British military delegation. These talks focused on areas of common interest for the two countries. To America North, or rather South, Nicaragua renewed its firm and unwavering support for the Sahrawi people in their legitimate struggle against the Moroccan occupier in a bid to establish their independent state. Speaking at the work on the 60th Congress of the Polisario Front, whose proceedings continue in the state of Al-Dakhla in the Sahrawi refugee camp, the special envoy of the President of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, carried out a strong message of support and solidarity with the Sahrawi people in their legitimate struggle against the Moroccan occupier, and also conveyed the greetings of the Vice President to the Sahrawi women in recognition of her sacrifices and constant struggle. The head of the government of National Unity, Abdelhamid Dbeiba, affirmed his government's efforts to hold national elections that would end the transitional phase and meddle with all institutions. Dbeiba expressed in his statement his rejection of a military authority that governs the Libyans, again calling for fulfillment of the dreams of the Libyan martyrs by holding fair and transparent elections.
It's our biggest challenge today. Elections should be our lantern and compass towards the path of preserving Libya's unity and the dignity of its people, and mark the end of these transitional phases. Since the victory of the February 17 revolution, the aim was to hold national elections, likely to end the schemes of all the parties that try to undermine the sacrifices of the martyrs of Libya and the martyrs of the February 17 revolution.
To Somalia now, where 24 members of Al-Shabaab movement were killed Tuesday, while the Somali army repelled an attack by the movement in the south of the country. The chief of staff in the Somali army said that the national troops will continue its operations in the vicinity of the town, which witnessed the attack, to hunt down terrorists. Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian was in Ankara for talks on bilaterals as well as regional issues with his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. Amir Abdullahian visits to Turkey comes after he visited Damascus last week and met with his Syrian counterpart Faisal Muqdad. The resumption of the first direct ministerial talk between Ankara and Damascus was hailed by Tehran.
We consider any progress in relations between Damascus and Turkey as an action in favor of the security of both countries and region.
Moving on now to Europe, Russia said on Tuesday that it would make major changes to its armed forces from 2023 to 2026. Promising to strengthen its military structure after nearly 11 months of its special military operation conflict in Ukraine. Nabil Khazini on what follow.
These are calls for civilians in the front line in Ukraine to leave their homes as sounds of explosions echoed in the city of Bakhmut, a city Russia claimed it has taken control of, but Kiev denies that. For several weeks now, Russian forces try to encircle the city, which is located on a strategic supply line between the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Such an operation needs more army personnel, and Moscow provided a timetable for the troop increase.
The major changes of the armed forces composition, increase on their numbers, the change of military and administrative division of the Russian Federation to be carried out within the 2023-2026. We will demand competent decisions from the deputies of Defense Minister, as well as Commanders-in-Chief and Commanders' Forces.
Pressure now mounts on Germany to supply the Ukrainian side with battle tanks, a pressure already being paid by the highest-ranking member of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's government, Christine Lambrecht, who resigned after heavy criticism on her response to the Ukrainian war. This NATO plane is the first of 3 surveillance planes to arrive at an airbase near Romania's capital. NATO refers to it as its eyes in the sky, and whose mission is to undertake regional reconnaissance missions to monitor Russian military activity within the 13-nation military alliance's territory.
My team is well prepared, and we will soon conduct missions from Bucharest for a limited period of time. This makes an important contribution to NATO's enhanced vigilance activities at the eastern flank of the alliance.
Nearly 11 months after the beginning of the conflict, Kiev heavily relies on Western supplies. On Friday, Ukraine's Western allies will prepare more aid to Kiev at a US airbase in Germany.
The US President Joe Biden met with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte on Tuesday, a day after the top Dutch trade official said that Netherlands will not immediately accept new US restrictions on exporting chip-making technology to China. Both leaders discussed Ukraine too. Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte said that his country plans to join the United States and Germany's efforts to train and arm Ukraine with advanced Patriot defense systems.
We have decided to spend another $2.5 billion on helping the Ukraine war effort. If you compare this to the size of America, it will be over $50 billion. We have the intention to join what you are doing with Germany on the Patriot project, so the air defense system. I think that is important that we join that.
To you as well to make sure we have a coherent European response, all Europe response to Ukraine. And Russia is just continuing to act in ways that are almost unbelievable. So the brutality with which they're acting.
The World Economic Forum kicked off its first regular winter meeting after a 2-year pause during the pandemic. The event, hosted in the Swiss mountain town of Davos, summons that time amid the cloudiest economic and geopolitical picture in years. Miriam Zian in the story.
The annual World Economic Forum has made a comeback after a 2-year absence due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The yearly event, attended by global political and business leaders as well as prominent social activists and hosted in the Swiss Alpine resort, comes in difficult times with geopolitical fractures and fears of deglobalization. The 53rd edition of the Davos meeting takes place amid one of the steepest economic slowdowns of the century, with the IMF warning that a third of the global economy could be hit by a recession this year. A WEF survey warns that energy and food supply crunches are likely to persist for the next 2 years. The forum is to promote solutions to address the most pressing challenges such as the cost of living crisis, the conflict in Ukraine, the energy crisis, the climate crisis and rising inequalities.
Our generation has reached a turning point, confronted by truly existential problems. Climate change, exploitation of nature, nuclear possible incidents, or even wars, extreme poverty and viruses.
More than 820 million people are going hungry, while the richest 1% of the population has generated nearly twice as much new money as the rest of the world over the last 2 years. Thus, a tax of up to 5% on the world's richest would help lift 2 billion people out of poverty.
The tax mix over the last 40 years have moved from those who have more to the average person, the worker, and mostly VAT. So we need to rebalance that because we have all this accumulation. So with up to 5% net wealth tax of multimillionaires and billionaires, we could raise 1.7 billion globally, trillion, sorry. And with that, we can eliminate poverty and even have a 10-year plan to eliminate hunger.
Technology and innovation are also high on the agenda this year, with what many are calling a fourth industrial revolution. However, the meeting is highly criticized by environmental activists who protest against the elite traveling to the Swiss resort in private jets amid an escalating climate crisis. The forum, under the theme Cooperation in a Fragmented World, will continue until January the 20th.
Still in Europe, Boris Pistorius is to serve as Germany's next defense minister at a time of mounting pressure on Berlin from Western allies to increase its commitment to Ukraine, especially by allowing the use of tanks. The 62-year-old Social Democrat will succeed Christian Lambrecht, who resigned Monday after criticism of her leadership.
We consider any progress in relations between Damascus and Turkey as an action in favor of the security of both countries and the region.
The hideout of Italy's most wanted mafia boss, Matteo Messina Denaro, was located by police in Sicily following his arrest in Palermo after 30 years on the run. Police found perfumes and designer clothes, but no weapons in his secret den, reportedly located between a bar and a shop for household items. Flames engulfed a logistics center near the northwestern French city of Rouen. The huge fire affects industrial buildings in Granada Colony, including one containing 12,000 lithium automotive batteries from Belloria Logistic. The site was evacuated at the end of the afternoon. The fire, which then spread to a warehouse containing tires, did not cause any injuries, and it is without danger for the population. Six people, including a 17-year-old mother and a 6-month-old baby, were killed in a shooting at a home in Goshen, California on Monday. Authorities described the attack as targeted and called it a horrific massacre. Taylor County Sheriff Mike Baudreau affirmed that 6 victims were shot dead at the 60,008 block of Harvest Road. Baudreau added that were at least 2 suspects who had not been caught.
This morning about 0338, just before 0400, 4 a.m. in the morning, the Sheriff's Office began receiving multiple shots fired, reports of multiple shots fired. Actually, the report was they believed an active shooter was in the area because of the number of rounds that were being fired.
And from North America to South America, hundreds of Peruvians, farmers and peasants traveled to Lima to mobilize for a new rally against President Dina Boluarte, despite the declaration of state of emergency. Hassan Burkan in this report.
Thousands of Peruvian supporters of former President Castillo defy the government of Peru and advance towards Lima from different parts of the country. All despite the fact that on Saturday, the executive extended the state of emergency in areas such as the capital for 30 days, an order that suspends rights such as freedom of movement and assembly.
We won't give up. We'll get there at all costs, even if it's on foot. We have our corn, our cheese, so we can have dinner. But afterwards, we will go to the Congress to shut it down and oust Madame Dina, the usurper, because she's killing us.
Since the protest began 5 weeks ago, at least 42 people have died in clashes with police. At the heart of the demands, the resignation of Dina Boluarte, who replaced the deposed ex-president Pedro Castillo, the immediate holding of elections, and the convening of a constituent assembly. In turn, Peru's President Dina Boluarte called demonstrators converging from the province to Lima to demand her resignation, to carry out their protest peacefully and calmly.
We know that the protesters want to take Lima because of everything that is spreading on the social networks. I ask you to come to Lima, yes, but peacefully and in calm. And I will wait for you at Government House to be able to talk about the social agendas you have, because you know well that the political program you are proposing is unrealizable.
Many believe that the government is turning a deaf ear after seeing all these requests rejected. Peru has been experiencing a wave of protests since December the 7th, when Boluarte succeeded Castillo, who was dismissed by Congress hours after he announced the closure of the legislature and the establishment of an emergency government with the suppression of constitutional guarantees, which the parliament considered an attempt coup.
48 bodies of the victims of plane crash in Nepal have arrived to the capital Kathmandu on Tuesday. The bodies of the victims were taken to hospital for autopsies. 22 other bodies were being handed over to families in Bukhara. Early on Monday, searchers found the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder from the flight, both in good condition, a discovery that is likely to help investigators determine what caused the crash. Coming back to Africa, Morocco has yet again tried, but unsuccessfully, to tarnish Algeria's image on the sports level by announcing its withdrawal from the African Nation Championship for home-based player Chan, arguing that its decision is due to the closure of Algerian airspace to Moroccan planes. Mohamed Khatou.
The Makhzen's allegations aim to deal a blow to Algeria's candidacy to host the 2025 African Cup of Nations, or AFCON, after its sweeping success in organizing this edition of CHAN and the last edition of the Mediterranean Games hosted by the western city of Oran. The president of the Algerian Football Federation, FAF, Jahid Sfizef, indicated during a press conference that Morocco's decision to withdraw from the CHAN 2022, hosted by Algeria, should result in sanctions imposed against it. He stressed that the executive board of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, will take important decisions concerning the boycott of the continental tournament by Moroccans in line with CAF's regulations. For his part, the president of the Confederation of African Football, Patrice Motsepe, indicated during a press conference here in Algiers that countries are sovereign and that the tournament will continue and decisions will be taken in accordance with his organization's rules. Morocco has accused Algeria of mixing sports to politics, forgetting that Algeria has always advocated for separating sports from politics, the evidence of which is the warm welcome reserved to the Moroccan delegation which participated in the Mediterranean Games in Oran, and the even warmer welcome that the Moroccan football team would have benefited from in the event they participated in the CHAN tournament. Algeria is ready through its high-standard stadiums, sports facilities and all the necessary amenities, as emphasized by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to host international football matches in the new stadiums, thus paving the way for the approval of its candidacy to host the next edition of the AFCON slated for 2025.
Coming to the CHAN tournament, Libya was the first team to exit the tournament's first group stage after failing to secure its first win in this competition, failing 3-1 to Mozambique. Despite taking the lead in the 23rd minute, Mozambique equalized in the 74th minute. And in less than 10 minutes, Mozambique added the second as well as the third goals, surprising the Libyan as well Algerian fans at Nelson Mandela Stadium. Libya is now at the bottom of the group after losing the first two games to Algeria and Mozambique. Algerian national team for home-based players now in the other game advanced for the quarter-finals of the African tournament after securing a 6-point lead in Group A with a second win in group stage against Ethiopia. Each team in this group has one game left. Algeria's next round will be against Mozambique, which needs just a draw to qualify directly, while Ethiopia needs to secure a win when facing Libya, hoping that Mozambique will lose its game to host Algeria. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. And for more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And for now, good night.